the recording, then we're
All right, let's call this meeting to order. Long Range Planning Committee, October 30th, 2024. Can we get a roll call?
I have 1:31. I just wanted to note the time, Ryan, if that matches your clock.
Yes, 1:31.
Okay, thank you. Roll call, Dombrowski, Feelick, Livergood,
Present.
Long. Sorry, Laura, I didn't hear you.
Oh,
I see you
I'm
though.
here.
Thank you. Marshall,
Here.
Reinders,
Here.
Shepherd,
Here.
Smith, sorry, Heidi Smith, Robin Smith,
Here.
and Todd. See the wave. For CCS, we have Rebecca Malinowski, Deborah Wishmeyer,
Here.
and Beth Stoneburner. Thanks, Alex.
Thanks, Beth. Any additions to the agenda? Seeing none. Would anyone like to speak in public comments? Seeing no public comments, we'll move on to approval of minutes for the September 17th, 2024 meeting. Any questions about the minutes? Any corrections that look good? If not, would someone like to make a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll move, Sue.
I'll
Can we get a
second.
sec? Thanks. All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. Minutes are approved. All right. Now we get to the good stuff, the review of the draft survey.
I will try to speak loudly. If my volume's a problem, let me know and I'll switch microphones. I sent the survey out for your review. I sent both the Word version and the actual form. I'm going to start in the Word version today because we have a couple of updates, but just know the formatting is not, 100% analogous. So just to start with the updates, Deborah provided me some feedback yesterday and I made some changes. So I adjusted some wording here to make it clear what the difference is that we're talking about between libraries currently understand that we're part of a group, or do you care if your patrons know that you're part of a group or not? And then some alternate language around funding, adding back in centralized services. And then I was going to add, well, I guess it's a question for you, the potential survey takers. In addition to your other feedback, do you think it's helpful to have a comment box for each question, or does that just feel like it makes the survey too long and arduous and you just want one comment box at the end?
I vote one comment box.
I agree.
Okay. So do you have other feedback? Do you feel like anything's missing from this survey? I wanted to keep it brief, and then have the opportunity to kind of direct future conversations at governing board where things maybe are less specific. But I'm happy to make adjustments if you feel like it's too long, not detailed enough.
Would you mind if we, not in excruciating detail, but if we just if you ask that question for each of the questions, if we just walked through the survey together, that would be awesome.
I'm happy to do that. So question number one, in your own words, what is the purpose of CCS? For me, this helps guide if we need to make any revisions to the mission and vision of CCS. And so I like that it's just sort of open-ended.
Okay.
What would you think about listing the mission and vision of CCS before asking the question?
I'm certainly open to it. I didn't because I wanted people not to be kind of influenced by the existing mission and vision, but I'm happy to do that if that is, again, you are my target audience. So if that is better for you all, I'm happy to do it.
It's always better to start with something.
I do think that the question is too open-ended.
But if I were gonna take it, I could always go look at the mission and the vision to see. But maybe that's just adding too much work to the survey taker.
Yeah, I don't want to make it hard for you.
Yeah, I think maybe I don't think you need to add the text of it to the question, but have links. In your own words, what's the purpose of CCS? CCS's current mission, CCS current vision. Link and
Okay.
link to them.
I'll just play devil's advocate here for a second. Because I kind of like the fact it's simple and it doesn't have the link to the mission or vision, because what's the intent of the question, Rebecca? Because you want to kind of get some insight into how governing board members, how they see it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think if you add the context, you kind of eliminate the purpose of the question. I mean, that's my opinion. If I'm the outlier here, I'm cool with the links or the description. I just wanted to throw a different take out there.
That's kind of why I thought the links would be better than putting the actual text of it, because if you are at a total loss and don't have any idea what to put there, the links can provide a framework. But if you have an idea of what you think it is, you don't have to click on them. You can just write down whatever it is that comes into your head.
Yeah, I feel like the links are a nice compromise, I guess.
I think I would just feel that if the words were there, I would feel like I didn't need to write it again. So I don't want to feel like I'm getting graded on what I think CCS is, and maybe I've totally missed the point the whole time.
The other option, and I mean, this can include leaving the links to the mission and vision, is we could change what is the purpose of CCS to what should the purpose of CCS be. And so maybe that feels less like a quiz and more like a visioning question.
I really hate shoulds because I find that there's too much gray. And what I think should be, there's probably another thing that could be. So I don't know. I liked it the way it was. But I'm willing to take the link.
What if we took the links out of the question and just put them like in the introduction to the member survey, so that they're not sitting right there, but they're still available on the document somewhere if somebody is really desperately looking for them?
I kind of like that because I have other suggested links for
Yeah,
other
I'm happy to
questions.
add, if we want to have like a context section, like introduction-y stuff.
Yeah.
I like that.
So I'm curious, is this, I mean, we've obviously done surveys like this before, right? I mean, what have we used in terms of wording previously?
We used it as worded here. In your own words, what is the purpose of CCS?
Yeah, so I guess that the reason why I ask that is I personally kind of like that consistency, because I think it's interesting over time to be able to then better go back and compare to what was previous, so that you can kind of get a sense of like, is this changing? Is it, how, if people responded to a question a certain way, the last time, and then we're using the same question here and that's changed, I think that gives you, maybe some insights that there's a shift in terms of how people are viewing things. Because I felt like I've seen these questions before. Like when I'm looking at this, I felt like there's a little deja vu. Like I feel like I've read these before, and I personally like that from a consistency standpoint. And then say, but then what else? Are there other things that we want to ask that, you know, would kind of like better define about some of the questions up front to be that consistent. So.
Yeah, so that question is definitely the same. Question number 2 is the same, but I added some, like, what does it mean to be a utility or a cooperative? I added some like helper text there. There's definitely some repeats in here from the last process. And yes, we have those results to then do some comparison.
And do you feel like you, like in the last time we did the survey, do you feel like you got good results from those questions?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, where should CCS be from utility or cooperative? I feel like it was sort of split, and I added the helper stuff here, specifically around the investment of staff time, because we've definitely seen like a decline in how many volunteers we're getting for things, which is fine. But if the idea is that, you know, you want us to just do the things, we'll do the things. But if, you know, members are looking for a greater involvement, that takes staff time.
Okay.
But yes, I do feel like we got good results previously, or useful results.
I agree with Brian on the continuity part of it. I don't have any problems with questions 1 and 2. I'm curious though, Alex, you mentioned that you wanted to see other links. Like, are you thinking about like a little reference section or?
Yeah, and it was, and you kind of have it here. I was just like, because on the Google form that you shared, you didn't have this definition of a utility versus a cooperative, and I think this helps. So that was going to be my links. Like,
Okay.
can you have a link and explain to me what a utility is? Because I think ComEd or NICOR, and I don't think CCS is either of those. But
yeah, I can add that in. I might change to SurveyMonkey. I was having some formatting challenges with forms, so I'll test it on SurveyMonkey as well.
I can see it in the Google form. I can see the descriptions. It's not formatted exactly the same, but it shows up for me.
Yeah,
Yeah, it looks like that.
Yeah. Yeah, really, the formatting for question number 3 was really like getting me. So I will try it both ways before releasing anything, as long as we're in agreement about the content. Other thoughts on question 1 or 2? Question 3 is new. And so there is a lot of text here. I'm happy to like add or change this text based on what you all think would be helpful. So we have a migration, or we're a little bit in survey overload right now, but we're going to rein it in. We have the Polaris satisfaction survey open now for library staff. And that goes sort of platform by platform, like interface by interface. Like, is this meeting the needs of your job? Are you satisfied with it? But from administrators, you know, you're not in the software every day. I don't expect you to have opinions on whether Simply Reports meets your needs. But I am interested in your general satisfaction with Polaris and Innovative. So it's hard to ask about value. Like, I don't expect that any of our directors have our budget memorized to know how much we're paying for Polaris. But I didn't get into like, what was our Symphony contract when we were smaller and it was 8 years ago. So I'm interested in your feedback on the content that's included here and the categories for satisfaction. Do you feel like you have the information you need to answer these for these categories?
Is there a way you can link to the results of the Polaris satisfaction survey? Because if you're mentioning that staff were asked to take it, are we supposed to then take that information into account when answering? You know what I mean?
No, it was just to give the indication that questions about functionality were being handled elsewhere.
Okay.
The survey the timelines don't really line up to have those results like linked to.
Okay.
We won't have that report done.
So I see myself answering that question, I guess maybe intuitively to see. I would think about how often my staff come to me with problems or praise of certain aspects of Polaris. I don't know that I would take the money into accommodation, because you're right. I don't know, less so that I don't know the budget, but I don't know what other options would cost and this and that. I'm less concerned about money than functionality. If it's working, I'm willing to pay for it. So I think, again, I would maybe, to maybe Valerie's point, not see the results of it, but I would go ask my managers or ask, the key staff,
Yeah.
hey, you guys took that survey. Do you have anything wonky that I need to know about in there? And kind of have that play my point. And if they're all like, yeah, it's all okay, then I'm going to give it high marks.
I would consider asking a different question. The question I would ask, and I think it's what you're trying to get to, or what we're trying to get to, is, do you think CCS should invest in comparing other systems to Polaris? Or are we satisfied with the Polaris overall? Is that the answer we're looking for?
Yes. So between one of our goals for this fiscal is essentially determining how long we want our Polaris renewal to be. And so we're already investing time in looking at other systems, with that being the question we're trying to answer at looking at them. I could just straight out ask, like, are you interested in a long-term renewal with Polaris for additional savings, or would you prefer a shorter term to keep our options open for potential changes?
I like that better. I don't know how everybody else feels.
I'll make a note while people think.
This is a tough one, because I think in a very general sense, doing some level of ILS evaluation every 10 years is healthy for an organization, right? But you also don't want to waste people's time if they're satisfied with the system.
So for context, we're already, Deborah is leading right now a project on kind of we're calling it an environmental scan. So she's surveying library staff. We're including some sort of question to administrators, and CCS staff are meeting with vendors for demos to see like what functionality might be out there that we're missing. Truly what it comes down to is, are any open source products intriguing to CCS, and would CCS want to pursue them? And I say that not because I have any particular affinity for open source products, but because the issues we have with Polaris, we're always going to be trading one set of issues for another with a traditional library vendor and with open source. But I think if we moved into open source, it's like different issues, as opposed to like being hamstrung by development timelines and pricing stuff. So what if we're happy with Polaris and we're happy to pay Polaris, $400,000 a year for their services and their software, like, I'm not going to stress too much about like, do I need to have different development staff different development talent on staff? Do I need to be thinking more from a product management standpoint as we're looking for, who we hire in the future, or what skills we're developing in-house with our existing staff? But I don't know that I don't know if I ask library directors that they will have a yes or no. So I am sort of circuitously trying to gather that information.
The way that you have the question designed right now, to rate on those 5 categories gives you, data points to evaluate. If we switched to should we have a short or a long contract? That's a yes or no answer, but there's nothing behind it, right? Both are valid. It's just what kind of information would you rather have to make these decisions?
I mean, for me, knowing if development is the thing everyone's mad about, not mad. I mean, I also want to assume people aren't all mad about stuff, but if development is a pain point, that would make an open source solution perhaps more intriguing. But if support is a problem, maybe open source is less intriguing because there's maybe less robust support. So, I mean, I feel like this could give me what I need if directors feel like they have the context to answer it. But if you feel like everyone will just be picking one kind of out of a hat, then it's not actually helpful information.
Well, if you get a lot of 3s, the one in the middle, you'll know that people have no idea.
Okay.
Yeah, it is tough, Rebecca, because it's not, because I think on the surface that long-term renewal for better pricing or short-term for flexibility, well, just without any context, I might say, oh, well, long-term renewal for better pricing sounds great. Of course we want better pricing, but then when you understand all the nuance behind this decision and how few options there truly are for us, I think someone might answer differently. I would probably, knowing what I know, I think my lean short-term for flexibility, but that's only because I feel like I know enough to be dangerous here. So I almost want to give you, I'm obviously governing board needs to decide, but at the end of the day, I think you and your team are the experts on this and we're not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I tend to agree with Ryan. I think, especially as your staff, like you said, have been kind of exploring, and if they're seeing something that maybe isn't right now or ready now, but worth a pursuit and might be ready in a nearer term, then yeah, let's then I can say I could be more on board with maintaining flexibility. But if your staff and other directors, I'm sure directors are out looking at these things more closely too, if they're excited about they're not finding anything to be excited about, then maybe just lock in for the longer term, and still keep an eye, and then maybe when the time comes up again a few years down the road, then that's the time to switch. How you make that into a survey question, I don't know. But
I feel like the way that this question is structured does give some of that, feedback then for CCS staff to evaluate and, morph that into, interpret it, I'm sorry, in a way that could answer that question.
Yeah, it's not in a vacuum, right? It's with the other work that staff are doing.
Yeah.
Can you say in the introduction how long this contract has been in effect? We've been live since 18, but is that the contract actually, is the original contract still?
Yeah, I mean, I think we signed the contract in 17 and then implemented and went live in 18.
So it's only been this one contract.
We did do one early renewal. So we extended it by 3 years. I can include that if that's helpful.
Because I don't know what you mean by long term, because I'm not, time goes really fast.
Yeah.
And so like, if you don't have anything right now that you're excited about, then I think long-term is the way to go. But I don't know how you would let me know that from that question. Because it just moves so fast and I really, yeah, that would be my thought on that. So unless you've got something right now that you're ready to go, then long-term is the way to go and we don't really need that question.
Well, we don't know yet is the short answer. We're looking right now.
And you'll know by 2026?
Yep.
Okay.
Mhm.
It's gonna be here before you know
I know that Deborah's doing it right this minute.
it.
She's doing the work.
I feel like I could not answer this question in a survey without a presentation about comparables and the work that you've done on this. I don't think it works in this survey format personally.
So let's back up for a second, Rebecca. What, because I think I agree with Valerie. And so what exactly are you looking for from governing board? What feedback do you want from us again? I know not to go in circles, but
No, that's fine. So in general, how happy are you with our current situation with Polaris? Is like the number one thing that I would like to get. If possible, I would like to know where, if any, pain points exist.
So you're
Whether that's-
asking about current environment. At this
Yeah.
point, you're not asking specifically about the future or comparison. You're just like, how are things right now?
Yeah. Yeah. Are you happy with the way things are? If everyone's like, stuff's great, we're not like, we're doing great, that really informs how much effort we put in to doing a deep dive in our other products. If everyone's like, oh, things could kind of maybe be better, like if people are like, oh, it just feels so expensive, like our focus then is on negotiating pricing in the contract renewal. If people are like, oh, I wish these like development, I mean, like truly what I'm looking for is overall satisfaction. If I get anything from value, development, progress, support, and troubleshooting, that would be like gravy.
okay. Well, then maybe we've answered the question. If
Mhm.
because it sounds like this would give you some of that feedback, and you're right. If you get all threes, then and then you kind of know, okay, people maybe they're not thrilled with it, but they're not angry about it. So it's yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
then you have enough data to go back and go further, and then have maybe a larger conversation. But yeah, anyway, not to get too far down the road. But yeah, I hopefully in this process this is my own opinion, that I want to make sure that we're giving you and your staff the autonomy to lead this process and us not to meddle too much, because it's complicated and there's a lot of nuance to it, and I don't think any of us are experts on the ILS environment in 2024 and beyond. So
and this is again intended to be kind of like the entry point, and overall the survey, not this question specifically, but overall, like what do we need to talk about at governing board? Where do we need to have like more specific conversations around things? So, if we get comments about it, if people are emailing me questions, like we'll go from there. Number 4, honestly, I could take or leave as a question. My assumption is that if people were not satisfied with our services, I would be hearing about it already. But I'm happy to have a question. And this is a question that we asked before as well. So I'm happy to see, how things shake out year to year on this. I'm making some assumptions. I'm happy to have a check on what those assumptions are and if they're true.
To echo what Brian said earlier, I do think having some continuity is helpful.
And that's the same with number 5. This is a question around kind of like branding and CCS, working with patrons, and like how much should be standardized from a visual point of view, library to library versus like, this is my library and it's just like can't like behind the scenes that we're connected and you get your stuff. So this is a question we've had before as well. There are some language updates here for clarity, but if we're more interested in continuity, I can revert the language changes and just use exactly the same language that we did 4 years ago. Again, like, are we out in the world, out in the patron facing world is like, we're CCS libraries and your CCS library card does all these cool things, or CCS is this background thing that just works and it's interlibrary loan magic and patrons don't have to think about it.
Can you yourself map the questions to each other, even if the language has changed? You know, like what you did
Yes.
last time? Then I don't have any opinion on the language changes as long as you guys know how to compare.
And then number 6 is kind of like, these are not necessarily things that I'm like, ooh, CCS should 100% do this. These are truly like, here are things that other consortia around the country do. Do you think CCS should do any of them? And so in the form, so again, I've got a couple here that aren't on the form. Just for reference, this I have is a 4-point scale. I don't like the way that's displaying, but it's CCS should not do this. Low priority, medium priority, and high priority. I don't really like ranking questions, like which of these do you think, like rank these from 1 to 10 of most important. I feel like that's really hard and confusing. So high, medium, low, not at all was my scale. But I'll pop back so you can read the actual. So I'm happy to add things here. Take things out.
Do we have our current high priority or perceived high priority items on this list as well? So are these only things that we're not doing or haven't done a lot of work on and you want to see if they kind of perk up?
So guess I could maybe add, what's come out of previous planning is that CCS should do the ILS and focus on the ILS. And so these are like a little bit more outside of that. So I could add one that's like CCS needs to focus on the ILS. Like that to me is sort of like operational, and these would be more like growth related. And if someone marked CCS shouldn't do any of these things, just do the ILS, they would just hit no priority all the way down.
That's fair.
Rebecca, are there any of these on here that you like genuinely would not want to undertake? Like, I'd hate for everybody to be like, I don't know, that sounds reasonable. Yeah.
No, I mean,
Okay.
I think there are some that are more attainable than others, and certainly some that would be more attainable long term, and others that would require some different structure to CCS, whether that's more staff or different staff or both. But I think all of them are potential, like appropriate if governing board wanted to make them appropriate, and things that, again, we may need, yeah, thinking 10 years down the line, our staffing could look different. But I think would be interest in any of these
Okay.
with our existing staff.
I was just thinking about like myself and like if I gave options to my board, to
Yeah.
think about, I would not put something on my list that I did not think was good for the community or good for the library, right? Like, because what if they picked that one?
Yeah, no, I don't think any of these are bad.
Okay. Okay.
That I'd be like, oh God, like,
Uh,
that's a great question. Thank you. I think there are some that I'd be very surprised if people prioritized, but that's fine.
So are you saying currently CCS does not do any of these things?
We have a data like we do work with data, but I wouldn't say that we have like a full-on data analysis program. We like build reports, but we're not like interpreting the data and like, publishing things and like sort of doing more of like a research-based thing. We're like answering questions.
The only reason why I ask is because the word prioritize makes my brain think that you're already doing these things,
I see.
as opposed to saying something like, should CCS add any of the following services or something like that to their mission? You know what I mean? Because it makes me
Yeah.
think that you're already doing them.
Okay. That's fair. And I think that's kind of what Alex was mentioning also, right? Like, are you doing these already? Are these things that are the other things we do on here? Number 7 is a question from last time. And honestly, we did not really get good answers from this. A lot of people left it blank or said like NA or like, I have what I need. The last time we did this survey again was in 2020. So we had like a whole section about COVID as well, and like CCS's COVID response and like what the libraries think they're going to need. So there's a lot from that other survey that's not included at all. Again, I'm happy to include this, but nothing really came from it last time. But we have 14 new directors on our board, so I don't want to just say like, well, nobody had any ideas last time. People may
Yeah.
have all kinds of different ideas.
Rebecca, if you gave some examples, I think it would help because what you're talking about is, for instance, mobile app or kiosks, or I don't know, like examples, not brand names of things, but just examples so people know what library marketplace means in terms of tools and services for libraries.
Yeah. Okay. Add examples.
And I'm not even advocating that we have to leave it in, if it wasn't a valuable question last time, if we leave it in, I think examples would be helpful.
I agree. It could look something like question number 6 if we leave it in, and you could specifically add examples that you might be able to work on, like an app, if that's the goal of the question.
My goal here is really that it's more open-ended. Like, essentially, what am I forgetting in question number 6 that you're like, oh, you know what would be helpful if someone out in the world did XYZ, and then we would evaluate whether CCS is who that someone could be, or should be, or
Maybe ask the question like that. In addition to the above options, is there anything else you would like CCS to prioritize?
I'm good with that, especially since the continuity component isn't as key here because it's, again, open-ended and See a nod. Is that capturing what you're saying, Valerie?
Yes, thank you. I feel like I think differently, so sorry about that.
This is why we have a committee.
Yeah, that's a great observation because I was thinking like library marketplace and like, well, we don't, we don't circulate any like virtual reality video games. So could someone vendor come with virtual reality video games our patrons could check out? I mean, that's where my head's going. I'm thinking about library marketplace and vendors, and I think if you got any feedback, it wouldn't be helpful because you wouldn't be able to do something like that, right? So this is good. That's a great suggestion.
Mhm.
Number 8 is a question we had on the last survey. And it's funny, almost everyone just said bigger, like some form of bigger, like 35 members or 20, like 30 members, or like it was all very or talking about like geographically filled in. So I like this because it kind of gives like it gives the opportunity for some dreaming for the dreamers amongst us, and also gives us something to kind of look back on. Like I referenced the results of this when I was like, okay, it's time to do strategic planning. Like, how are we doing on the last plan? Like, what are people thinking about? So
Yeah, I think that's a fun question. A technical suggestion, and I know you said you might switch over to SurveyMonkey, but the size of the text box, just make it the same size as like page 7 and 9.
oh yeah. We'll work on that.
And I'd be interested in going back and revisiting what the last time we did this, or the past couple times we've done this, what were some of the things listed, and so we can go, yeah, we've done that, or that's still in progress, or we decided not to. I think it'd be interesting.
Yeah, I can definitely pull that up for our next meeting or send it out a summary via email ahead of the next meeting. I don't need a month to pull that together. Yeah, and then just number 9, what else you got?
Yeah, it's always a good one. Catch all.
Yeah. Are there things that you as a committee want to know that are not listed here?
I would want to know if there's anything that you or your staff are struggling with, not like an explanation, right? But like CCS is really having a hard time, handling this thing, and we want to know if we should keep doing it or not doing it. I don't even know if there are any things like that. Obviously, I've only been live for 3.5 weeks in this iteration. But I would be curious. So you just might say no and be like, no, we're doing all right.
So you want not to add to the survey, but you as the committee want to know from CCS staff?
I guess what I was saying, and this is probably, now that I'm trying to explain it, probably useless. If there was something that CCS was struggling with, this would be the time to ask for input on it.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Well, so maybe along those lines, and maybe you do this. Do you do a comparable survey for CCS staff along these lines? That kind of gets to Sue's point, asking different questions, but similar questions. We want to know if they think there's what do they want to prioritize? They work here. What do they think that would be really good here? Where do they want to be in 5 years? Where do they, do they think there's exciting open source options out there? What do they think CCS, in their own words, is? I would be interested in that.
Yes. Yes, it is not written yet, but it is intended that we will do some like strategic thinking activities at our upcoming staff meetings. But I think using all or some of these questions as to kind of like seed that discussion I think could be really useful. And then we'd have those recorded to bring back to the committee as well.
Thank you, Alex. That is a good idea. That's it, right?
Yeah.
I have a suggestion for to add a question under question number 1. Because we ask in your own words, what is the purpose of CCS? I would want to ask a question that says, based on your answer above, does CCS meet your expectations? If that makes sense. Something like that.
Yeah.
And then kind of a why or why not, so they could fill it in.
Yeah, I like it. I'm adding it. I'm thinking about the format of the question and like, do we want like a Likert scale or just a why or why not open text box? So that is my staring into space face.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like just at the very, very highest level, right? It's just sort of maybe even a yes or no. Like overall, are you satisfied with CCS? That's an interesting concept. Like I always think about surveys, like what they look like on the back end, right? I'm envisioning the graphs that, come out of this, and I could see a pie chart. It would be like, 90% of, CCS libraries are overall satisfied with the service we provide. Like it's kind of a nice little thing to have.
Laura, were you gonna?
Yeah, I'm just thinking now. I mean, so we're asking what the purpose is of CCS, and then are we asking if it meets your expectations? Would it make more sense to not have that based on the answer above? Because, or to say something like, does CCS fulfill its purpose? Or that's sort of what I'm trying to think about.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I feel like Valerie and Sue are maybe saying different things, and that Laura, you're kind of identifying that difference. Like we could ask like an NPS question. How likely are you to recommend CCS services to a library colleague, to a standalone library? And we have asked that in the past. For a while, back in like 2016, we were asking it of like library staff, and they're like, I don't understand what that means. How would I recommend CCS to someone? So that we were kind of pulled back on that. But so if we're looking for like, how are people doing? We could do that. What I'm hearing Valerie ask is like, what do you think CCS's job is? And is CCS doing its job?
Yes, that's where I was coming from.
Which is like a little bit different than like, how satisfied are you with CCS?
I agree.
What do other folks on the committee think? I can go either way. I'm like,
I mean, we could do both. We could do, in your own words, what is the purpose of CCS? Based on your answer above, does CCS fulfill its purpose, or, whatever that might be? And then ask another question that says, based on your experience with CCS, would you recommend it, or are you satisfied, or, whatever, however you want to phrase that.
And I'm not pushing for that question. I think this stuff is fun to talk about, but we don't need to put it on if it's just to placate Sue.
You could have that as part of question 4. Please indicate whether you agree or disagree. just add it there with that list.
Oh,
Although that's
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's probably not worth adding another one. I just got carried away about pie charts.
Yeah.
like Snickers, CCS really satisfies. Agree or disagree?
We'll give you a full size Snicker bar if you say yes.
I love it. Other questions, comments, suggestions?
I think this looks good.
So I have a timeline. We like sort of high level talked about timeline at our last meeting. But we have our next long range planning meeting scheduled for December 9th. I'd like to have a report put together for you in enough time for you to review it. So forgot Thanksgiving exists, but I think this will still work. I mean, I'm going to tell people the survey's open until November 20th. But I will give people 2 extra days if they need to be poked at governing board. And then I will do the analysis ahead of that.
Do we have any libraries right now that are without directors or with interim directors? I know we met Heather yesterday. Thinking out loud, I don't know that it matters.
I think, Deborah, is it just Fox River Valley right now?
I can't think of any others.
Des Plaines.
Oh,
yes,
Des
thank
Plaines,
you,
you're
Beth.
right.
Yeah, Des Plaines. Yeah, and both Lori and Heather have like been very involved in CCS, so I'd be very comfortable with them participating if that's what you're getting at, Sue.
Yes, that was what I was getting at.
And then I was going to include Vernon in the survey as well, but maybe give them a different version where the questions aren't all required. Because I am interested in like their response to number 6 and number 7. Like they must think CCS is a good value or they wouldn't join. Like I don't anticipate they'd be able to answer all of these questions, but I would like, to have that additional data point for the sort of more future focused as opposed to satisfaction based questions. Does anyone have a concern about that?
As long as you feel comfortable with either including or not including Vernon's answers in the overall, however you see fit.
Okay. Yeah, I can finagle. And then I was going to send just like the shortest little survey out to non-members that are like kind of in our geographic boundaries or bordering our geographic boundaries. So you haven't seen this. This I just wrote up. This is really to help us think about staff workload, projects, I don't anticipate that anyone would be able to tell me like, oh, absolutely, we were going to do this in 2028. But to just like have some libraries in a maybe pile and like a definitely not pile, I think could be helpful in the future as we're thinking about like goals and stuff.
would it be helpful to ask them if there are barriers that would prevent them from, considering whether it's their budget, whether it's their board, whatnot?
So I'm really open to doing that. The reason I didn't is that I didn't want it to feel like a sales pitch, and I didn't well, I guess that doesn't matter. I'm like having a conversation in my head. If I'm asking them about barriers, am I then implying that I'm interested in removing those barriers, or that the board is interested in removing the barriers? Or is it just informational and then we bring it back to the group to further discuss?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah. And they could kind of provide, if they were interested in sharing that information, number 3 or 5 could give them that opportunity.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
You could also just, instead of using the word barriers, use what factors would you consider when thinking of joining CCS or any other consortia?
My goal is that it's like super easy for them to fill out, so they fill it out. I'm happy to add it and not make it required.
Yeah, the more I think about it, it's easy enough for any individual member to call up and ask them what their barriers are. Like I can probably tell you off the top of my head what the barriers are for the geographical libraries that are in it, at least some of them. So it's probably not necessary. I mean, it isn't necessary. It was just that was me thinking aloud before I processed it in my mind. So my apologies.
Yeah, I think this is short and sweet.
Yeah, and so I was gonna send individual emails to those directors with a note like, we're in strategic planning, like we're just trying to gather information, like not sign you up for our like email campaign, like
yeah, no pressure.
Yeah, no pressure. Like I just need to know. And I did keep this shorter in terms of a completion time, because I'm hoping it's something they can just open the email, fill it out, and send it right back. And hopefully that's what happens. But there's time for follow-up if we need it. And so again, this should be very easy to put that data together and take a look at it.
That'll be fun to get that info back.
Yeah, good. Will they fill it out? I don't know. So library directors are nice. But that's what I have.
I think it looks good.
So that is what I had for the committee today. My goal was to get feedback on the survey. Feel like we have a few changes to make. I have some format testing to do. Outside of that, are you comfortable with me just finishing formatting and sending on the discussed timeline?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Any other thoughts? I guess Rebecca, you're ready to go then. Thanks for the thoughtful.
I mean, I have what I need. I don't know if there's anything else the committee would like to discuss.
Yeah, thanks for the conversation and contributions. It was good. It was a good team effort. Everyone had different perspectives. That was valuable. For sure. So looks like the next meeting is December 9th at 10 a.m. And I guess that's it. So do we have a motion for adjournment?
Or you can call the meeting, Ryan.
Oh, I can call it. Great. This is great. I'm thinking of like my own board meetings where, yeah, let's call it. Unless there's any other final thoughts, takeaways.
Good job, Ryan.
All right, let's get out of here. Thank you, everybody. Have a great afternoon.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
I appreciate it.
I'm noting the meeting ended at 2:31. Just putting that in the recording. Thanks,
Excellent.
Ryan.
Thanks, Beth. Bye-bye.
Bye.